the Around the NFL podcast. Would never tank for a better draft pick.
From the Chris Wessling Podcast Studio, it's Around the NFL, the podcast, the flagship show. Week 17, I'm Dan Hanzus. Heroes here, Greg Rosenthal and Mark Sessler. Hey, boys. Penultimate, one of my favorite words, penultimate week of the regular season.
I did wake up at about 3:14 a.m.
Nice joke that you slept it at all. That's good.
No, I did fall asleep deep into a deep sleep and woke up in that mind haze where I was convince myself that not that this was the final week of the season because it was week 17. I just thought it was week 18.
Right, me too.
And then about 27 seconds later, as consciousness started to take over, I was slapped in the face psychologically.
Hard. It's been a tough one. It's been a year. Like, we are remarkably fortunate to have the jobs that we do. And
we love these jobs. We love these jobs.
But when the calendar falls every 5 or 6 or 7 years, when things line up, Happy New Year, everybody. And we have a full slate of games. For instance, I'll be having some ibuprofen rolled in here shortly because the bullet whiskey that I had last night for New Year's Eve
still in the system.
Hasn't left yet.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm sober,
right.
But in my head, pain. I also thought this was the end of the regular season right before it, and then I think that was just like a mind cramp.
Week 17, I feel like, is like that because it feels like the end often. We get rid of a lot of teams, a lot of tickets are punched, and the 18, the last week, often feels like a little bit of anticlimactic. So maybe we can push the NFL to just end the regular season a week early. I don't know how that would work.
I'm sure that would lose.
I think we've already been through that negotiation.
A $1 loss would negate that as an option. Yeah. And since you mentioned it, let's say goodbye to some teams before we get into the rundown. A little spoiler for people out there. The following teams have been officially eliminated. Mark, this will lift your spirits. Take them out of your brain.
Not all of them, but okay, some.
The Washington Commanders, the Las Vegas Raiders, the New Orleans Saints, the Carolina Panthers, and yes, the New York Jets.
The Jets doesn't make me happy, and the Panthers doesn't make me happy either.
Yeah.
This was a season of sneaky collapses for a lot of teams out of nowhere.
Yeah.
We just mentioned a couple
We'll get to it. Let's start, though, with a game that was not closely contested, but very interesting in the scheme of the NFC and the race for the Lombardi Trophy. Increasingly looking as if maybe both these teams will be playing in the postseason. Certainly one. And the one that's definitely in was licking their wounds at the end of Sunday's action. Set up.
Out of the shotgun with a setback to his right.
I need
ibuprofen. Cousins. He fires it over the middle, and it's broken up incomplete. Intercepted on the deflection. Picked off by Darnell Savage down the left side of the 40. He's got an escort to the 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Green Bay Packers. My goodness.
That is what you call a tone setter for the Green Bay Packers, who, with their playoff lives on the line, absolutely housed the fraudulent Minnesota Vikings. 41-17 at Lambeau Field. That was Darnell Savage, yes, with the pick six, and it only got uglier from there for the Vikings, who entered the game at 12-3. Final score 41-17. Greg Rosenthal, but this was a game that was 41-3 with 10 minutes to go. And this is now, not the first time the supposedly mighty Vikings have been absolutely trounced by a half-decent team.
They trailed by more than 20 at halftime for the third time this year. That's the most of any team in the NFL, along them tied with the Texans. I'm glad we started with the Savage return because this defense, and I'll throw the special teams in there too with Keyshawn Nixon, who's been dynamite lately and had the first touchdown of the game, 105-yard kickoff return. But it's really been the defense and the special teams that's helped turn this season around. And the defense in this game was put on the field at the 1-yard line after the Packers had an early punt block, and they had a terrific goal line stand, 3 straight stuffs of the Vikings, force a field goal. Then they get the return touchdown, they get the interception return touchdown, and Jair Alexander Alexander had one of the best games any cornerback has had all season long. He traveled with Justin Jefferson for most of the day. More than half of the pass routes that Jefferson ran, Alexander was on him. On those 20 routes, targeted 5 times, only 1 catch by Jefferson, and passes defense. It didn't matter what the Packers offense did in this game. The defense and the special teams won it for him.
It makes you think about the Packers in a different way because they had all their issues all season long. And a lot of it was just focused on where's the MVP version of Rodgers? Why is this offense lacking, pre-Christian Watson, a viable wide receiver?
What happened to the defense that was supposed to be so good, right?
And the defense, in certain metrical ways, looked promising. But today, to your point, Greg, the Nixon kick return, the Darnell Savage pick 6. These things happened at a point in the first quarter where they were up 14 points, and they had 15 yards on offense. So it's like the offense. This isn't just rise and fall with Aaron Rodgers every week. And I mean, Jair Alexander did not track with Justin Jefferson in that week 1 game nearly as much. And that's when he had 184 yards. He had 0 in the first half. This is one of those games. The Vikings have done this. That Dallas game, they gave up 40 points, 36 in that collapse to the Colts, 34 to the Lions, 30 to the Bills. Your defense is who you're stuck with in Minnesota right now.
And I thought that Alexander defeated Justin Jefferson, who entered the game as a sneaky MVP contender, if you wanted to look at a wide receiver as even having an opportunity in that realm. And he beat him mentally and physically. Leading into the week, he had the comments in his locker calling that huge week 1 by Jefferson against Green Bay a fluke. And you could see once Jefferson was getting frustrated on the field and Alexander was playing great and the Vikings offense was just completely asleep, Jefferson kind of losing his cool and unable to kind of process the moment and stay in the game. At one point, he almost bashed an official's over the back, like Randy Savage hitting Hulk Hogan with a steel chair in WrestleMania 5. It was like a complete meltdown from Minnesota.
Right, he didn't know the official that was there, and he lifted his helmet as if to slam it down, ran into the official, and then sort of
that
realized
could have been really bad.
It could have been horrible. I'm glad that it didn't happen that way.
I know Vikings fans have gotten on us for not giving them the credit due left and right and talking about the offense leaving everyone else by the side of the road, but there's a stretch here when the game was manageable and they unfurl an interception, they miss a field goal, another interception, then a missed field goal, then a fumble, then a pick, and then a bunch of garbage time nonsense. It's like this is the version of the Vikings that is very hard to trust.
Although to be fair, the one thing they've done better than almost any team this year is play clean football. They have not been a turnover team. They've not been a penalized team. They've not been a pre-snap penalty team. And they were all of that today.
It's a collapse.
The Kenny Clark forced fumble was another big defensive play. Cousins melted down a little bit on that forced fumble play. Cousins didn't see that immediately before the snap. Justin Jefferson was covered by Preston Smith, a defensive lineman, and Kirk Cousins held the ball, and then it got taken away, and he was fritzing out. And it's partly because he lost his center immediately in this game, who was already their backup center. And Romo pointed out smartly, I think, they couldn't change the call, so they're on their third-string center. They might get him back, but their other offensive lineman that left this game was Brian O'Neill, their right tackle, who was carted off. So it was really a nightmare scenario for the Vikings, possibly letting the Packers into the playoffs, probably losing the number 2 seed, definitely losing home field advantage chance.
And you're starting to look at, you start to peek ahead at what the playoffs could look like. The Giants will get to. They're in the dance, and there's a very good chance now it could be a Giants-Vikings rematch. Those teams played very closely on Christmas Eve, and the Vikings might even, if that ends up happening, or whoever they get in round 1, they might sneak out another close win, but do not tell me that this team is a serious Super Bowl contender. I don't want to hear it. I've seen it too many times this year. You may win a close game in round 1, but you are cannon fodder at some point in January. I've just seen too much this year.
It's almost in a lock that they will win a playoff game in the fashion they've won all these other insane games.
Probably a big comeback.
Right, and we'll think, you know what, they can do that against whoever they're playing the next week, and then the floor will fall out because you cannot run away from this defense.
Well, they'll probably have to play 2 road games against 2 really good teams now, so this will have an impact. They're now -19 on the season in terms of their point differential.
12-14.
They're 12-4. The Packers and the Lions are both plus point differential at 8-8, and the Packers, even though Rodgers didn't play an amazing game and like every part of their team hasn't always been perfect week to week, they're playing their best football without a doubt right now. And I'd much rather be playing the Giants or the Vikings, for that matter, in round 1 of the playoffs than the Packers.
I
if
wouldn't
they
want
get
to
there.
touch Green
but
Bay.
we will see. We will see. We got a lot to get. We got a lot to talk about.
These other NFC teams have to be slightly agitated at the Vikings for just allowing the Green Bay to waltz into the scenario here.
How are you, by the way, Mark? Because I know you didn't want Green Bay anywhere near the postseason.
I think differently about them, because you know what I don't like is the 13-3 team that they fold the tent, and they've done that over and over. This team is weird.
I don't think you like any version of the Packers.
I'm researching.
I'm honestly like this. They're not on my radar as an annoying concept right now. They're kind of the opposite.
I do like, though, because it's the Packers, how Mark agreed that he'd be the one to pay the charity, the Green Bay-based charity, if they end up making it.
I would love to help
the
the people
teams.
in Green Bay.
So they need to win one more game. They're winning in now.
I get to pick what the charity is, though.
Yes. I mean, I would suggest something like an orphanage or a local food bank.
That's what you would suggest. We'll see. I'll come up with something.
It can't be something that goes back to you through some type of Swiss bank
But
account.
it's like, who do I want to help? What kind of who do I feel
it
is
cannot
needy?
benefit you, though, Mark. In terms of the committee,
I'm
we
not,
need
I'm
to
not
have
trying
some
to, I'm not trying
level.
to launder money back into my bank account. I'm saying I might just pick an atypical target.
All right. So we mentioned that the Vikings finally left an opening now for San Francisco to move up in the NFC seeding. Did they take advantage of it? To the desert. It's pretty good for a guy with a headache.
By Stidham, going to throw out left for Devontae Adams. It's intercepted. He
yes.
The ball right to Deshaun
Thank
Gibson,
you, Eric.
Running back the other way, 30, 20, 10, 5. He's out of bounds.
Eric just brought me pills.
Flag is down.
I'm like Judy
return.
Garland.
Now it's on the 3-yard line. Do you bring in Robbie right now and kick it? How do you handle this?
Kick it.
Yes, there it is. Bongos.
Oh, it deserves it.
Wild game.
Yeah. One of the few.
Bongos. As I pop my pills.
I mean, if we're requesting substances from behind the glass, I mean, I know what Greg
What else we
would
got?
ask for.
Oh, stop.
As would I.
Greg Papa with the call. KNBR. Big interception in overtime by the Niners, who finally have a really down day on defense. Jarrett Stidham, of all people, lights them up, including a late drive to tie the game and push it into overtime. But when it came down to it, they got the big stop in overtime, kicked the field goal subsequently, and escaped 37-34. So yet another win for the Niners. And the Raiders, yes, eliminated with the loss. Mark Sessler, your thoughts?
A totally bizarre occurrence, because we spent all week thinking, well, you've essentially given up on your season, because in a solid quarterback in Derek Carr, he's been flushed out of the organization at this point. He's unfollowed them on social media. The last time we saw Jarrett Stidham play, it was like, you're just asking to get romped 2 games in a row to end the season, and Josh McDaniels somehow protected all of this mess. Stidham looked incredible. I mean, he's never thrown for more than, I believe, 75 yards in a game, 365 yards, 3 touchdowns, 123 rating, especially in the first half. I thought what the Raiders did was very interesting, and it reminded me kind of what happened with Brock Purdy when he had his first start, was we're not going to dial back the offense or try to just hand the ball off to Josh Jacobs 400 times. We're going to attack downfield. And he looked like he had been practicing and working with Devontae Adams for months. I mean, he just looked it was the most comfortable-looking quarterback performance by any quarterback in the Raiders system I've seen in a long time. And it's not really a knock on Derek Carr, but it's just kind of like, how weird can these seasons get? Because who would have thought 2 months ago you're getting Jarrett Stidham versus Brock Purdy, and it's 2 of the better performances we've seen all day long. And I mean, for Purdy, I thought this Niners team in general, they were tested today. Suddenly you give up 500 yards of offense. This is a team that hadn't been scored on in the final 2 minutes all year, and that happened to them. And so they went into overtime in a situation where you could collapse psychologically if you want to, after Robbie Gould misses a would-be field goal to end this thing, and let this high-flying Raiders team come back and stamp one on you when you thought you get out of here with an easy win. I thought they're very resilient. Like, the Niners just sort of who they are. But Purdy made all sorts of throws in this game, too. That all their weapons are so impossible to stop. Christian McCaffrey was unbelievable in this. And so it's like, had they lost, I think it would have wiped away the sense that the Niners actually, to me, it doesn't change what I think about them at all in this. They had an off day defensively. They were caught off guard by Stidham, but they won, and they found a way to do it. And it's like a lesser team, a team like the Vikings, some of these middle-tier teams would have found a way to collapse, not San Francisco.
It doesn't change how I feel about them, but it's a reminder that in 2022, 2023 now that we're in this season.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
If the weather's okay,
Greg, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, buddy. we weren't together on New Year's, but we're together now.
Always together.
We really are always together. Any defense can get lit up. I know everyone threw that game away because they were a little injured and they were playing the Chiefs, but they had the worst performance any defense had all season against the Chiefs. Yes, the Raiders had a lot of good plays happen to them. I just think good offense can beat good defense ultimately, and so that's why you need a quarterback to make plays for you. And Purdy, to his credit, to this point, I think has shown that he can make enough plays. It's trending towards Deebo Samuel being back for next week's game, so that's good for their offense, and they're going to be plenty motivated to beat those Cardinals and get the 2 seed.
This was the first game where I thought a team made Purdy look a little uncomfortable, and he worked his way out of it. So I get you. You can point to the Chiefs game. They were so banged up, their defense back then. And, yes, this happened today, but this feels more for this defense.
I mean, 500 yards of offense, people need to apologize to Jarrett Stidham. I hope they kept those apology notes that they sent to Josh Allen a couple of years ago.
How about the Patriots apologize for letting the better quarterback out of the building? Look at the way he played today.
Did we mention it was Nick Bosa who had the hit on Jarrett Stidham?
No.
That led to the interception that led to the game-winning field goal. We talked about it last week that we thought he might have clinched Defensive Player of the Year honors. Now he's just padding his resume at this point. So another huge Bosa moment. And you mentioned McCaffrey, Mark. I don't think enough has been made. This is to John Lynch's credit, to Kyle Shanahan's credit. What a huge trade that was. And he has come as advertised and been an absolute anchor of their offense. I mean, he had nearly 200 yards of total offense in this game. And I know the fantasy owners out there in championship week are celebrating that as well.
Oh, they're on fire right now.
Yeah. I mean, so, yes, I had San Francisco at number 1 in the power rankings. I'll keep them there. It did bother me a little bit that when it's 34-27, when they go ahead late, I thought the defense was going to make the stand there, and then you just move on. The fact that it got to overtime, I thought the Raiders should have went for 2. In fact, it even looks more ridiculous now that they didn't go for 2, knowing that San Francisco went right down the field. But I know there's some logic to if there's too much time on the clock at the end of the fourth quarter, you don't go for 2 because it doesn't guarantee you the win, and there's a chance, obviously, that you could lose. But I would have said screw it if I was the Raiders and went for it. They didn't, and they get beaten overtime. So their season is over in a very strange, well, it's not over, but their playoff aspirations are gone.
I'm glad that you're keeping the Niners in the number 1 spot. Like, I'm not trying to beat this dead horse anymore, but it doesn't. I feel like they had a weird game on defense.
It happens to any team sometimes.
But that's to me, it's sort of beside the point. But that's to me why I will take the team with Josh Allen or Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes any day, because you just never know what could happen on defense. And it is sad to put this Raiders season to bed, because I know you look at it, it's 6-10, and we know
it's almost humane that we're putting it to bed, to be honest. Not sad.
It's one of the most insane NFL seasons any team has had, since we started this podcast, just in terms of the amount of insane games.
Yes. I think it is the most insane, like for a non-playoff team.
The Chandler Jones ending, the Baker Mayfield ending, winning on the last play in overtime, back-to-back weeks, Broncos and Seahawks. You lost to Jeff Saturday. You chunked the lead against the Jaguars. You didn't score a point against the Saints. You lost by 1 in primetime against the Chiefs.
Stupid.
You lost on a 2-point conversion at the buzzer against the Titans, and you blew a 20-point lead against the Cardinals. That's all in one season.
Well, they blew another 10-point lead today, by the way.
Right. Well, they did that, and after everything that Josh McDaniels saw, his move was to not go for 2. Obviously, they should have went for 2, and they would have got it, because you just want to throw it to Davante Adams, who, by the way, is going to be lost in this crazy season. He's amazing. The catch he made that set up their game-tying score, there's maybe Jefferson gets it. Maybe you could throw out another name, makes the play that Davante Adams made to set up the game-time score in the fourth quarter. But he goes 7 for 153 and 2 touchdowns. That's another guy. The Raiders went out and got Adams just like the Niners went and got McCaffrey. Both guys were as good as advertised.
And Josh Jacobs, too. I mean,
Over 2,000 yards from scrimmage, Josh Jacobs. And this team misses the playoffs.
Right, if you knew all this was going to happen,
10 losses.
You would say, like, I'm going to go put a lot of money on the Raiders to make the postseason.
You know who wouldn't, though?
I would not.
The 12-foot tall man in the back
the
who
giant,
hasn't spoken
the quiet,
since 2008. A
Raiders
fan
who
has no faith in this team.
More real feelings, though. You can't hurt him.
It doesn't
There's
strike
no highs,
me as a passionate
lows.
Raiders fan. He's a passionate
Can
person.
we get a camera on the big man? There he is. Look, he's going to look at the camera for the first time this season. This is why you watch it on YouTube, everybody. Let's take a break. A thumbs up, maybe? No. Let's take a break, and
Barely a
we'll
Raiders fan.
continue on. All right, welcome back. So we talked about the Vikings. They drop in the NFC. The San Francisco 49ers move up in the NFC. Yes, the Eagles, the number 1 seed in the NFC and have been all season, but it's starting to get hairy to Philadelphia.
Takes the snap, throws a quick one, and that's picked off by Marshawn Lattimore. Pick 6. Welcome back, Marshawn. That's how you do it. Happy New Year, baby.
He had sat on this earlier, and that was just a hitch route that Marshawn almost got.
He goes.
He jumps it all the way. That is exactly what this Saints team needed.
Good night.
I love, Dan, how you operate as a third or fourth man in the booth on these calls.
I'm the homer in the booth.
It was like a wounded animal screaming out multiple times at the start of that.
Don't Zolaki and me. Deuce McAllister there, you heard, and also Mike Haas, WWL. Yes, Marshawn Lattimore returned an interception, 11 yards for a late touchdown, the clinching score for the Saints, who at the time were still alive in the playoff race after they beat the Eagles 20-10. Let's now welcome in the pipe. That's what they all call him. Nick Shook from Ohio. Shooky, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, fellas.
Are you worried about the Eagles at this point? What are we thinking?
No, I think they can't get Jalen Hurts back fast enough because for as well as Gardner Minshew played last week, their offense lacks the explosive playmaking ability of Jalen Hurts. It's really that simple. They had 61 total yards in the first half. They had more yards on their opening drive in the second half than they did in the entire first half. They lost the time of possession battle nearly 23-7. It was something like 22-50 to 7-10. They barely had the ball. They had no plays in opposing territory, whereas the Saints were coming up on 30 in the first half. So it was essentially going to be a tale of two halves, and then Gardner Minshew throws the pick six that we all saw coming from basic pre-snap leverage, and Marshawn Lattimore, who made a great read on the play, jumped in and walked into the end zone. So they need Jalen Hurts back. It's really that simple. I think they'll be in a much better spot, but now they're in a position where they're a little threatened with that number one seed, the fact that they have to now actually play for it in week 18 as opposed to just coasting there like we thought they would a few weeks ago. So it's an interesting turn of events, but I'm not too worried about them overall because they still have a great team. Defensively, one of the better pass rushes we've seen in the last 2 decades, at least statistically. They need 5 sacks next week to take over the all-time record for the most sacks from a defense in a season. So they're still a good football team.
That shows how complete they are. I mean, even in recent weeks when Jalen Hurts had the rare miscues, a couple interceptions, what he does so well, like, you don't worry about it because he'll back you out of any corner and then overtake the opponent with what he can do on the ground and through the air. If Minshew's making mistakes, you're a mess. And if you look at the splits, Lane Johnson, I think he missed 3 games last year, but when he was not in there, the offense was affected greatly. And Minshew took 6 sacks today without Lane Johnson in there. I think that's another one where it's like, I know he's going to be back for the playoffs, but this version of the Eagles offense looked completely asleep at the wheel for the first time all season.
Yeah, I'd be concerned, Shooky. Like, maybe it's not as simple as just get Hurts back in there. Maybe it is. But they've kind of lost their flow here. And I know sometimes this word is frowned upon, the momentum of the season where they were just a swaggering juggernaut. And now you've been humbled a little bit with back-to-back losses, and you need this win, obviously, to get that number 1 seed. Maybe you get the win next week and all this is wiped away. Probably is. But still, there have been some issues. The Hurts injury, the Johnson injury. Unfortunately, Josh Sweat went down with a neck injury and was carted off the field. And Josh Sweat, by the way, is one of 4 Eagles players with 10-plus sacks this season.
They lost Devontae Maddox last week, too, who's really a big player for them.
So, along those lines, it's been a tough last few weeks for the team that I think everyone was universally praising as a Super Bowl contender at a high level.
Yeah, I definitely think that they're going to have a tougher road in the playoffs than we might have anticipated a month or two ago. But there's also, instances like today's game, which could have gone very differently if a referee didn't call holding on Landon Dickerson, who pancaked the guy he was blocking.
I know that got you mad. That got you mad, Shooky, because you love that in the trenches. And I heard that Moose Johnson was pissed about it.
That Twitter fired up. Yeah, that's
I want to hear you get mad now.
Well, Moose said, I'd give him a plus rating. That's not a hold. And I agree. When you drive someone into the ground, he trips over another guy's leg, and he eats all that Lincoln Financial Field turf, he should know that he got pancaked. Lay on top of him. Lay there for an extra second. Really emphasize it. And watch that touchdown. Watch that runner get in the end zone for a touchdown. Celebrate by doing lay out on top of the guy you just pancaked. Put your arms and legs out like you're swimming. Except you're just surfing on top of him because you just earned that placement. That shouldn't have been a flag.
We should be able to change those calls. I mean, it's just like
no, we shouldn't. No, Mark. No.
I don't. What do you mean no?
we went down that road. Pass interference was a reviewable play, and that was a dumpster fire. Let's not.
Holding would be tough to ever review. Although Belichick is for reviewing anything. They're giving me major Andy Reid vibes, though. Like, this was. Eagles fans know it. Andy Reid, like those Eagles teams when they were at their best, would always race out. Like everything would be handled a little too early, and then the end of December would go poorly, and it would feel like it would carry over. Based on my very scientific sample of Eagles fans at John Gonzalez and Colleen Wolfe's New Year's Eve party, they were already panicking before this game. They're such negative people that they thought it was already all falling apart. So I don't think it was a good.
They're probably feeling great.
It was not a good scene at that apartment today.
Hold on. Like let's hold back on the panic button. Like, you don't have your star quarterback in there, an MVP candidate.
I'm not panicking.
Well, but we're also laying out that it's not just Hurts. Here's the good news, and this is why Connie and Gonzo and everybody's got to take a step back and breathe. You get the Giants next week. The Giants, who are locked into the 6th seed, they have nothing to play for. They would be foolish to go all out knowing that they have a wild card matchup the week after. So there's a very good chance the Eagles get a layup against a Giants practice squad team. So the sky is not falling, but yes, some clouds overhead for the first time this season.
Well, that's all right. You can experience some clouds, but I'll panic when they're getting the doors blown off with Jalen Hurts in the lineup, and so will they be, because that would be the end.
I have a scientific fact, since Greg said that was very scientific research that he provided. The P in Philadelphia actually stands for panic and pessimism. So it's right on board there.
This was a very Saintsy end to this season in terms of their playoff hopes here, that they finished the season playing their best football. Without a doubt, to me, their last 3 weeks have been the best 3-week stretch they've had. You get Lattimore back, and you've had a few different defensive players coming in and out of the lineup, but mostly they've been a little healthier lately, and they've looked better. And I know there are a lot of Saints fans out there that think this is the worst case scenario, which is that Dennis Allen, who I believe is now 17-46 as a head coach,
great hire,
will keep his job, but they're not going anywhere anyways.
I would run it all back.
It's
been a great campaign for the Saints and their fan base, and no one would disagree.
Keep Jameis on the roster.
Shaheed, Jawan Johnson, and Olave as the top 3 receivers. It's a fun little group.
I want to shout out Cam Jordan, who once upon a time, after he was drafted, came into old NFL Network studios, and I sat in the green room and interviewed him, talked to him about his dad, Steve Jordan, who did a Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig vignette for WWF in 1992 that I recalled, and he told me about being on the set. And he was just a kid at the time. Fast forward, he is now the all-time sack leader of the New Orleans Saints.
And that's a team with some Hall of Famers that are pass rushers.
Great career.
I think it's possible your Q&A, sparked him.
Maybe. Mr. Perfect, after all, was one of the great technicians ever.
At one point, they had 4 sacks in 8 plays, the Saints, which is
Do you know who Mr. Perfect is, Greg?
Yeah, I did watch WWF
Paul
right
Orndorff,
when he was speaking. No, Kurt.
That was Mr.
His
Wonderful.
name was Kurt
Hennig.
Hennig.
Oh, Kurt
I was
Hennig.
going to say like Stenning. I couldn't come up with it.
Yeah, it was good. Also, his finishing maneuver was the perfect
That
plex,
was my favorite move.
which I did all the time to my little brother Kevin with just startling accuracy.
Yeah, back then you'd suplex your younger brother here and there, and there's no parental supervision over this. It's this is not a safe thing for brothers to be doing, but it's going to happen.
It's
gonna
toughened them up, though.
Yeah.
All right, let's head to the nation's capital. Well, Landover.
On the right hip of Watson, it's Kareem Hunt. He's got the snap. 3rd down and 5. He's looking left, throwing. Cooper's there. He got it. Cooper up the sideline. Still going. Cooper running down the sideline. 10,
Amari Cooper, where you been, bud? Wide receiver for the Browns had a big day, and so did Deshaun Watson, who had his first real statistical standout performance with the Browns, a 24-10 win over the Commanders, who, as we said, were eliminated with the loss. Tough one. Bad beat. Shooky. The Commanders had Carson Wentz in the lineup, and that did not go well.
No. It makes Ron Rivera's decision to go to Carson Wentz this week after benching Taylor Heineke last week. It makes it look foolish, short-sighted, maybe even desperate. I mean, this is the Carson Wentz we've seen at the end of seasons for the last 3 years. I was not surprised at all by the fact that he threw the interceptions that he threw, or the fact that he struggled mightily, and to the point where Browns defenders after the game were talking about, hey, we saw on film that he's got a slow delivery, slow release. We can see it. We can react to it, and we can pick him off. They got him 3 times. I mean, it was an ugly game. They had one great drive this entire game. It was Greg, you sent me the fact, I think it was the longest drive in their history, or maybe in football in like 20 some years.
23 plays, 11 and a half minutes, 96 yards.
Yeah.
That is delicious.
Yeah, and that was it for them. That was all they did. The rest of the game, it was pretty bad because Carson Wentz is not a good quarterback, and Washington is going to be in the market for a quarterback again this offseason. I'm just curious to see where he goes next, Carson Wentz, because at this point, there's no proof that he's really any good.
Well,
but the Browns... Go ahead.
No, I was just saying he'll invariably be oversold to us as some other team's fill-in-the-blank starter, and I'm not doing it again. I feel like I came into this week very down on the idea of switching over to Wentz, no matter what you had in Heineke. The fans agreed. They were going nuts chanting Heineke's name during this game.
Yeah, I think you were talking about Reggie Ragland on the Browns, his comments. He said that he knows some guys on Washington's team and that they would have preferred Heineke.
That's exactly what we talked about last
different.
week. Like, what about the other players on this team?
I mean, the thing is, like, Heineke can't really play either. I think the point is, like, they need a quarterback, and they don't have it in the building.
It's why I said, though, Riverboat Ron was making a pretty bold move here, because this is what you're going to remember out of this season. They haven't won since November 27th. And this was the most important game of the season, and he throws 2 interceptions in the first quarter, I believe, and the boos are coming. And then he speaks after the game in a soundbite. I feel like everyone's going to remember for a long time.
Yeah. Or until Black Monday.
To clarify, you said you would talk about quarterback next week. If you guys are eliminated today by what happens at 4 o'clock, is Sam Howell in consideration?
We can be eliminated.
Yeah, if the Packers beat the Vikings, then you guys are eliminated.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, I know that's I guess a bad look on the coach. I don't know. It doesn't really change much to me. It doesn't mean it changed anything about his coaching or the way the team performed or how they would be ready for next week. But I also understand you want your coach to be forward facing as a guy that knows his stuff.
I also think, and Greg and I were talking about this, like, these coaches are in their bunkers and they just want to come out and win this game and let the rest of it sort itself out. I get that. But in 2023, here we are, like, head coaches can't get caught.
Happy New Year.
Thank you, and to you as well, and to each of you, and to everyone behind the glass. But head coaches can't get caught flat-footed on this stuff. I mean, I was listening to the Niners game, and they were talking about the fact that Shanahan, behind the scenes, had been pounding the table to his players, saying, if we can't get the number 1 seed, the number 2 still matters so much. Like, it just sounds like Coach A plugged in, and Coach B dinosaur-like, and like maybe that's not the case. It's just bad PR, and like that sound clip is going to get played all day tomorrow, all day the next day, and it's the final thing we'll remember about this Washington team as they float into a total abyss.
They haven't had a winning season in 7 seasons. There's potentially new ownership coming. It's a tricky spot, especially when you're trying to throw out excuses that it's like we were just so focused on the win. Like, these are the coaches that sort of brag about working 15 hours a day, and it's like, oh, well, we didn't have time. It takes 3 seconds. All you have to do is look at the scenario. It takes 3 seconds.
Famously, in the old days,
it's not like it takes a lot of time. It takes 5 seconds.
Right, help the guy out too. In the old days, in the glory days of the Washington football team, the Hogs helped pave the way for 3 Super Bowl titles. They were honored before this game. Joe Gibbs and others from the franchise's heyday were there. And then the team unveiled their new mascot.
Oh, boy.
It's a hog named Major Tuddy. And the team said that Major Tuddy is a muscular, this is a quote, 6'5", 230-pound male hog with exaggerated features that are anatomically similar to the animal, including a large belly, snout, and cloven hooves. Shook, my question to you, first of all, do you like Major Tuddy? 1. And 2, just like everything else is funky and weird with the Commanders, like they're probably selling the team and a new ownership is changing hands, is most likely. Like, why are they introducing a new mascot? what are we doing around here?
I think it's the same reason that teams change uniforms to sell merchandise to generate excitement.
But it's week 17. Like, was this a homework assignment that they were late on?
There's probably someone's bonus attached to it. I don't know how much merchandise you're going to sell of this. We're looking at it here on the screen of this Major Tuddy. It's a very strange-looking pig, half human, half pig. It feels slightly off-kilter to me.
Guys, how about
a lot
this?
of commanders in Washington, D.C., and the Pentagon.
What's that, Chicken?
Can we come up with nicknames for Major Tuddy? How about, I got 2.
Ooh.
Private Pork, Brigadier General Bacon.
This is why we have Nick Shook on the show.
Private Pork is a great name
Private
for
Pork,
this
I feel like
creature.
I've maybe seen a movie with that title. Shook, before we say goodbye, I'll check in on Deshaun Watson. He obviously played a lot better in this game.
Yeah. 3 touchdowns. His first time that he really got going with the Browns, got into a rhythm, especially in the second half. I mean, this is a Browns team that got 2 takeaways in the first half and put 3 points on the board. Their offense was completely lost. That Washington pass rush was doing a great job of, I texted my dad who was upset. I said, they just broke his brain in the first half. I mean, he was completely out of sorts. They come out of halftime, 3 straight drives that ended in touchdowns. That touchdown pass to Amari Cooper, I think, is really what unlocked their offense. He looked a lot more comfortable from there. Stats-wise, 9 of 18 is not super impressive. 169 yards, not super impressive. But the fact that he was able to throw 3 touchdowns to 2 guys, including one where he was pressured, threw it over the middle to Donovan Peoples-Jones, it's an encouraging sight for Browns fans who have nothing else to watch this team for other than to see, is this guy going to take another step forward as we head into the offseason and prepare for 2023?
There you go. Shook delivers the news. We get one more week with Nick, who's killed it all year long. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
All right, there goes Shook. Let's spin right into the battle for the moribund NFC South. It was coming down to the Panthers and Bucks, and the game actually sounds like it lived up to the hype.
Takes the snap and looks toward his way. Throws toward Evans, toward the end zone. Evans, Andre Bay makes the catch. Touchdown Tampa Bay. Evans has 3. Fire the cannons. Fire them. Evans with a remarkable catch.
Fire him.
Mike Evans ran up at 5 yards. He stuttered his feet. And Tom Brady again. We've seen him not be in sync on these deep throws over the course of the season, but he hit 3 of them today. Perfect.
That was Dave Moore, and of course, Gene Deckerhoff, WFUS Gene, who's retiring after a 50-year broadcasting career that has also covered Florida State football. What a legend. Tom Brady threw for 432 and 3 long Happy New Year, Gene Deckerhoff.
I'm sure he'd reply if he could.
Brady threw for 432 and 3 long touchdowns to Mike Evans just days after Greg Rosenthal threw dirt on the greatest quarterback of all time. And the Bucks clinched their second straight NFC South championship with a 30-24 come-from-behind win over the Panthers, who jumped out to a big lead, Mark Sessler. But in the end, Brady finally finding that chemistry again with Mike Evans was the difference.
It only took literally all of 2022 and a day into the new year. And
it was a 2022 thing. Now everything's back to normal.
I think they're clicking, and I think it's a great sign. We've talked about this bizarre division. I've said it before. I just see it within that they're going to win a playoff game. And this version of this offense would scare you because it's what you thought you'd get all year, because you got it last year and you got it the year before. And they came out, and you could tell right away that they were so deliberately going to do everything they could to make this finally work when it needed to matter most. And it was still a frustrating game, but a 63-yard deep bomb to Evans, a 57-yarder, a 30-yarder, they just finally were completely in sync. And Brady, who, I don't think anyone all year long has said, other than the last couple of weeks, that Brady has been the problem. I think the turnovers and some impatience and sort of hesitation in the pocket last 3 or 4 games stood out, but he looked calm and collected today. 432 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's only a few years younger than I am. I don't know how he's doing this. Here's the thing, though. The Bucs defense played a big role in this. Sam Darnold, who I think played the best. He had a fumble. He had an interception. He had a strip sack. So that stands out. That was a big difference in this. But the other, what Sam Darnold did for the rest of this game was the best performance I've seen him play all year. And after that huge rushing performance last year, they did not come out and do that. I think Ben McAdoo deserves some credit for how this thing got started, that they aggressively had Sam Darnold ripping the ball downfield to DJ Moore, to it looked like their passing game under Darnold was a real problem for the Bucs. Then they tightened up, got the turnovers, handled their business. Mike Evans went off. Here go the Bucs. Here go the Panthers in the other direction.
Yeah, it's surprising that this division is not coming down to last week. It just felt like it was going to be a messy situation where the Saints were still alive and the Panthers were still alive and the Bucs were still alive. And they were down 21-10 in the fourth quarter. It's crazy. Brady has more touchdowns in the fourth quarter this season than the other 3 quarters combined. I mean, he has been like lights out at the end of these games. Evans going 10 for 207 and 3 rewarded his loyal fantasy owners that kept him in the lineup, like my son Walker. So they enjoyed that. But you mentioned it. Like sometimes it comes down to this whole offseason planning. Anthony Nelson, who's their 4th string pass rusher, gets a strip sack on a top 10 pick, Ike Ekwonu, at the end. Darnold really didn't have a chance on that play. You don't blame Darnold. And that was the end of the game. I kind of thought the Panthers might go down the field there, but it didn't happen.
Sam Darnold. Yeah. That play also doesn't happen without Vita Vea, showing now he's he's big as a front door. The speed he chased down that ball and picked it up. I mean, that was the difference.
J.C. Horn's injury might have flipped this division. I know that sounds like a cry, like a lament, but he would have been the guy on Mike Evans. He's built for that. He's the big physical cornerback.
They put different guys on Evans, and nothing worked, so correct.
And Evans, for all the hand-wringing about this season, for him and his failure to get on the same page with Tom Brady, he did go over 1,000 yards again. He's done that 9 consecutive years. He's going to the Hall of Fame, or at least he should. One of the most consistent guys of his era, if not the most consistent pass catcher of his era. 63, 57, and 30-yard touchdown receptions. It was almost like, if you think about it, unless you think Tom Brady's washed, which he's not, maybe he's in a little bit of a decline at this point.
It's not Jarrett Stidham, but
right, he's no Stidham.
It's fine.
But it's a situation where eventually there was gonna be a game like this, and for the Bucs, good timing.
Can I
just
mention
won a division
19 division titles for Tom Brady.
That's insane. Yetur Gross-Matos on the Panthers had an incredible game. Had they won, we'd be talking about him a lot more. And they mentioned, we know Josh Norman, who we worked on that Super Bowl with on Sky Sports.
Slightly disconnected.
That he was actually working as a barista in a coffee shop last week when he got the call.
Did he not save his money?
Well, no, I think they were.
He owns the shop.
Well, that was my thing.
People really ran with this, but it's
right. They tried to make it sound like
he's starting a business.
It's his shop. That's a little different.
They didn't tell the entire story on the thing, and I was like, wait a minute, it can't be a money thing because he's got to have a ton of money. It's like,
He was telling the truth. I think he was serving coffee, but he's
got that Sky Sports.
He started some businesses.
He was working as a barista though, Greg. It wasn't just like back in the it wasn't just like sending emails out saying you go do it. He was doing it. So. Good for him.
Good for Josh.
Man of the people.
Intrepid.
Would you go work in a coffee shop right now just for the?
If it was mine?
To be around. Well, I guess that's true. Sure.
Maybe.
If you owned it.
He signed.
Technically, his mom owns it, but I think they're sort of doing it together.
The story keeps shifting here.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's
Well, I think she was helped out by her.
This has
son,
exceeded my interest.
Yeah.
Now we know we're learning more and more.
We'll move right on from it.
Who co-signed the lease? Oh, his mother.
I don't care.
Well, Greg seems very unwilling to give him any credit for anything. I just think it's like, I don't know where you're coming from, Greg, on that one. Move on.
And by the way, it does look like, again, peeking ahead, as Mark has said many, many, many times, that he believes the Bucs will win a playoff game. Most likely they'll host the Dallas Cowboys.
That's not good for Dallas.
Very good.
As a first-round matchup, I'll take it if I'm the Cowboys.
I'm just saying one of these predictions has to go right, so I'm going to go with it strong.
You got a lot on this one. This one has been
because it's a good one because there's no way for it to be wrong for 12 or 13 weeks from when I made it way back when. It just sits out there until
I think your career as a broadcaster hangs in the balance of that wild card Saturday night or whatever it's going to be. Probably feels like a wild card Saturday night game.
Putting that much on it, I've got a lot of bills.
He's a top 10 football insider.
Let's take a break. All right, welcome back. All right, let's now swing over to the AFC playoff picture starting at Gillette Stadium, where the Dolphins and Patriots did battle.
Duggar up behind the front four. Big snap. They rush four. Bridgewater is back to fire it right past. Intercepted by Duggar. Left to the 30. Outside to the 20. To the 15. To the 10. Duggar to the 5. Duggar to the end zone. He took it to the house again.
Bob Sochi and the Sentient Powerade bottle with the call there for WBZ. I tweeted about it today, and we're going to get to the Jets. I feel like with a decent quarterback, the Jets would have won 10 or 11 games this year. If the Patriots didn't have 7 defensive scores this year, they might have 11 or 12 losses.
It's the reverse.
Like it feels like.
Well, how about this though? If they had Josh McDaniels, they'd probably be 11-5. Just change those coordinators.
All right. Well, that's potentially true as well. But my point being that almost all of these defensive scores in the latest there by Kyle Duggar have been huge in the context of the games in which they occurred, because Duggar's pick 6 of Teddy Bridgewater went back 39 yards for the go-ahead touchdown late in the third quarter, and it allowed the Patriots to keep their postseason hopes intact. They rallied past the free-falling Dolphins 23-21. Yeah, it was huge. It was a game that the Dolphins seemed to have not in hand, but they seemed to be in control of the game, even though Teddy, who wasn't playing poorly, but you felt that lack of explosiveness with him in instead of Tua, who, by the way, there's a report that they're hoping he could be back if they make the playoffs. So that tells you that the team, again, is trying to take this carefully after another concussion for Tua. But the game all turned on that pass, because not only was it a pick 6 run back the other way, on the follow-through of the throw, Teddy whacks his hand on a Patriot defender's hand and breaks we're hearing might be a broken finger. It knocked him out of the game. Skylar Thompson comes in. Skylar Thompson might eventually be a player in our league. Right now he is not. Every time I've seen him, he can't throw the ball. He can't shoot straight. And that allowed the Patriots to take care of business. So good job by the Pats in a season that's been, Greg, very rocky, obviously, in a lot of ways. I think a lot of people expected them to fade in this game and disappear, but instead they're going to go into Week 18 with a chance to make the playoffs.
It's like Belichick can't help but win 8 games no matter what terrible decisions he makes with his coaching staff and personnel offensively. And it's because he's still a great defensive coach. That's what I mean. They would win 11 games if they had decent offensive coaching, because a lot of the things that they would have hoped to happen on defense have happened. Duggar's turned into a total star, a playmaker. Barmore was back in this game and was very active. We've talked about Uche and Judon. They were down 3 top cornerbacks today. They put Jack Jones on IR. Marcus Jones was out. Jalen Mills was out. They had a couple offensive players up. The Dolphins were missing 4 or 5 of their best players. It's just like some of these teams have lost so many pieces, but the Patriots find a way, because of these defensive scores, essentially, to be in every single one of these games.
Yeah, I mean, the AFC East, from where we were 6 weeks ago to now, is the story of multiple collapses. And you're right about the Dolphins going into this game. It's not easy to be Mike McDaniel in this situation. You did not have Bradley Chubb. You don't have Tua, obviously. Xavier Howard was out. Teron Armstead was out. Eric Fisher, another tackle, is out. So you're limited there. And this is the same thing happened to McDaniel the first time when Tua went out with a concussion. That in comes Bridgewater, and he was lost to the same game. And in came Skylar Thompson. It's an ugly pattern.
And both times Teddy played without Teron Armstead too, I think, which is not a coincidence.
And that's been for Tua too a major problem. I mean, to your point about the New England's shortcomings on offense, they're 8-0 in games where they allow fewer than 20 points, and 0-8 in games where they allow 20+.
Right, and if
they won this one allowing 20+.
Going into this.
Gotcha.
Right, so you could just say 21 now. But that still.
Sure.
But that might not even hold. We're going to have to recalibrate all the data now based on that.
Plus, it's never their offense that's scoring. Their defense has scored half the touchdown.
It should be known it was a garbage time score by the Dolphins to make it look like a closer game. The Patriots had the game in hand in the fourth quarter, really starting with that Duggar play. And yes, if you're going to watch this game, if you haven't watched it yet, like, oh, are the Patriots starting to get a little frisky? No, it's still the same exact team here. The offense is still pitiful. They had one big-time drive. It was an 11-play, 89-yard big boy drive that allowed them to take control of the game after the pick six and kind of put the game away. So you credit Mac Jones and the offense for doing that. But otherwise, it was another very quiet game for the offense. So that's going to continue to be a bugaboo. They're winning games because they're getting literally not just turnovers, defensive scores that are allowing them to steal these games. The 7th defensive score this season. That just doesn't happen. I think it's tied a record. I think in 2017 Jaguars either had 7 or 8 defensive scores. It's bonkers how often it's happening.
It's almost, it's not Vikings level aberration, but it's an incredibly strange environment to be winning these games.
They are now winning in next week, but they're playing the Bills, who have become their daddy. And there is a realistic scenario that the Patriots could end the season getting blasted by the Bills.
Oh, no, Daddy.
In back-to-back weeks. That they could get blasted by the Bills back into the playoffs at 8-9. Granted, a lot has to happen there. The Jets would have to lose. The Steelers would have to lose a game. But it's possible, and I don't know if this Patriots team needs to be in the playoffs. We'll see. The Dolphins
I know that they do not.
I know, but one of these teams is going to make it, whether it's the Dolphins, the Patriots, and we'll find out about the Steelers later. The Dolphins now, just hope that the Patriots lose to Buffalo and beat the Jets, and they're in. So they have a very realistic chance to make it in still, but who the hell knows?
I know we're supposed to cheerlead like everything that happens.
I'm just giving the scenario. No one thinks that they're going to win games.
This 7th playoff team in each conference, like more often than not, you're getting something that is undesirable to the eye. That we don't want to see the Dolphins without Tua. We don't want to see the Patriots. We don't want to see the Steelers.
But you're getting the Packers or the Lions. So that sort of speaks to it. Like, you just don't know. Like, you're also getting the Vikings.
I guess I'm just saying it's typically unpleasant fare.
There was, what was it? It was Washington. Or no, they won the division. I can't remember. But it feels like whatever this new reality with the extra playoff team, you're usually going to get a real dog, and it feels like that's what this final AFC team will be. But again, we don't know.
Right. Last year you got the Steelers, who are not a good team.
Steelers-Chiefs game was vaguely
and the Eagles, who were intriguing on some level, but not really competitive.
That was a bad game, too, against the Bucs.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. This 7th seed is underwhelming.
It's making money for
it's like
various parties.
You have an invite list to your own party, and someone brings someone who drags the entire affair into darkness.
It's diluting Wild Card Weekend a little bit, but it's also adding intrigue to the back end of the regular season. So maybe it's a wash. Here, by the way, before we move on, here is the Dolphins season: win, 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 loss, 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 win, 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 loss, 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 loss.
I worry about.
There's some consistency in that almost.
It's symmetrical. It's also embarrassing the way this is. They've nosedived here, and they're not the only team in their division to do so. Let's move on.
Gino has time. He's going to throw in the back corner. Caught! Touchdown! Seahawks! What a start! Colby Parkinson from 12 yards out runs a little bender into the back corner, and Gino lays it up perfectly. So only the big tight end at 6'7" can reach up and grab it.
Steve Rabel with the call. KIRO.
New York City.
Thank you, Lesson. Yes. Geno Smith connects there with Colby Parkinson. Was that the name? Colby Parkinson on the 12-yard catch. That was within about 2 minutes into the game after Ken Walker ripped off a huge run on the maybe the second play from scrimmage in the game. And it was kind of just like a wrap. It was the first play from scrimmage, Walker's run. At that point, because before you knew it, it was 7-0, then 10-0. And at that point, the Jets' offense went to sleep, and Seattle's defense, credit them for stepping up and keeping their season alive with a 23-6 victory. So Seattle moves to 8-8, and Greg will tell you in a minute how they get to the playoffs. The Jets are now 7-9, eliminated, 5-game losing streak. I locked this game up. I knew it was a bad idea, but what the hell?
You went with your heart.
I went with my heart, and it did surprise me, though, and I'll tell you what surprised me. And if you boys haven't watched the game, you will be surprised too, because everything we saw from Mike White this season told us that he was going to give the Jets a professional effort. He would hit the guys that were open. He would hit the layups that Zach Wilson couldn't. But instead, they got a Zach Wilson game from Mike White, which we've also seen before, dating back to last year. And that was always in the back of my mind that guy was there too. And he showed up today. It was a dreadful performance from Mike White, who I feel bad for him because he cost himself a lot of money today. He cost himself any chance of being in the Jets conversation as their quarterback next year. All of that is kind of wiped by the board, and that's part of sports. Sometimes you have a big chance to change your life and the trajectory of your career, and White just couldn't get it done. And neither could the Jets, who started slowly, also defensively in this game. Their defense went into a little bit of a slump here late in the season, in addition to the quarterback play that just butchered their year. And that's how it ends for the Jets. Good job by the Seattle, though, getting the job done.
When your defense, which has been, your selling point and playoff level for all season, is giving up that 60-yard run. It was the DJ Dallas 41-yard catch and run. It was like these big plays, and again, they're not generating takeaways. That's been a problem for this Jets defense to some degree. And you get this version of Mike White. Glass half full. Let's say Mike White won these last two games and played above his head, and they do turn him into the starter, and then the real Mike White appears. Because last year, the overall body of work for Mike White is up and down. It's just that he's had some real highs.
Here's the thing, though, Mark. If he did play well and they won these games, the Jets would have went to the playoffs this year.
Right.
And that would have been a huge lift for the organization and the fan base. And then, yes, they might have blown their Mike White evaluation down the line. But, God, I would have loved to even be in that position. It's really,
but that's why I'm calling it glass half full.
Yeah, no,
the glass is also half empty. But.
Because you do now know, there's no doubt that
he could be the backup, but he lost himself some money.
Exactly.
Gino has a chance to make some money here down the stretch. Not that I think it's like all based on these last couple of games, but I think playing well at the end here is going to help him. Mike White is going to hurt himself. He could be back there as a backup. But, yeah, I saw something – which surprised me. The Jets will have the longest playoff-less streak in American sports if the Kings make it this year, and they look like a pretty good bet to make it in the NBA. I would be disappointed just for the defense at the end of the season. You give up almost 200 yards in the first quarter of this game, and then they settled in. But it is hard to depend on defense totally. And it's hard to have like a truly special defense week after week, just the way the rules are set up. And I think down the stretch, they weren't enough. They weren't playing complementary.
There's something I keep hearing about the Jets, and it to me is a bit of a be careful. Not that you have every option in the world, but it's like if they can just get a quarterback who's vaguely competent, they'll be fine. It's like, no, you'll just be a team, all right team with a vaguely competent quarterback. That's your ceiling. It's like, the search must go on. I just think you cannot settle, and that's all to be solved later. But they're not a B- quarterback away from going to the AFC title game.
But, again, when you have not been to the playoffs in 12 years now,
I get that.
You just want to get to the playoffs again. And, like, this year especially is frustrating because you know the whiff on the Zach Wilson evaluation and the decision to take him with a second overall pick it's a huge setback for the organization that will continue to mushroom until they figure out how to properly move on. And I think they will entirely from him, which is almost unprecedented.
Did you see the reporting, though? That Joe Douglas
I don't buy any of that.
So that stuff all sounds like mythology until they have no other option.
Right.
And
they want to have some leverage here, so they're going to say that he might be in their plans next year. Obviously, he's not their future anymore, and we know that. But just the disappointment is you knew that this team, if they had a couple of things went their way, if they had got a little better health on their line and with Breece Hall, and if the quarterback just played okay, this is a playoff team this year. They should be the 7th seed, and yet they're on a 5-game losing streak, and it's another big Jets collapse. This did not feel like the year this was going to happen. That's why I locked the Jets up today, because I thought everything we knew about, and this is on Saleh too, and the coaching staff and the defense, I thought they were going to kind of rally around White and play really well in this spot against a fading Seattle team. The fact that they flatlined is very disappointing and a bad look for everyone involved. And, Greg, I still think Saleh is very safe job-wise, even if next week goes poorly. But I think a head could roll, and maybe it's Mike LaFleur, their offensive coordinator. I don't know if I would agree with it, but they have 4 touchdowns in 4 weeks now.
I really hope nothing happens in the AFC East, but I've learned doing this job, it's all about ownership sometimes, and I don't trust the leadership in Miami or the Jets to handle a 6-game losing streak the way that the season will end for whichever team loses that game. So I think that's a big game. And it's sort of the reverse. Not that Pete Carroll would ever be in any trouble, but, man, this is a monster win for the Seahawks to comfortably end their losing streak, for their defense to play really well for a second straight week, to be able to run the ball on offense, 198 yards on the ground. They've been collapsing too in the exact same way the Jets did. Now they get the Rams next week. If they can win that game,
give it to us.
I mean, unfortunately, they need the Packers to lose to the Lions in Week 18, and otherwise they're eliminated. So they just need to win, and they need the Packers to lose. It's pretty simple for them. They have the tiebreak over the Lions. So a Seahawks win over the Rams would also eliminate the Lions next week.
There you go. I don't know if it's happened so many years in a row, including literally every year we've done this podcast, but it's almost getting to the point where it doesn't hurt as much because I'm just so used to them crapping the bed when it matters.
I can relate to that. When I was doing the Browns thing, that one little playoff win that they had over the Steelers, I mean, it's been a train wreck since. Mattered a lot. It changed everything, and it changed your complexion and your what kind of hope you'd have going into the next season. If, Greg, this happens where Jets management decides to blame Robert Saleh, frankly, even Mike LaFleur, or any of these guys for what's happened at the quarterback position, the utter and total chaos they've dealt with, then I think you start building a binder of your own, Dan, because that would be massive mismanagement.
No, and I don't think it will happen. But Joe Douglas is somebody that's very interesting now with the Jets because he's now the equivalent of a baseball slugger who hits 45 homers but strikes out 200 times. The Zach Wilson miss is reverberating, and it ruined their season. I don't want to put too much on one player, but it's quarterback, and that's the way it is.
And not having a backup.
Well, that didn't help him either. They kind of did until Mike White turned into Zach
Wilson
today.
Mike White was a great story until 8 hours ago.
That's fair.
Brian Costello, the New York Post, had a great lead today. It was like he went from Mike Effin White to Effin Mike White. All right, let's. I do not care what the Washington Post says. I don't.
That remains.
I still don't. Where are we at? Oh, let's head to the team of ATL. Onward and upward.
Goff takes the snap, looks left, now comes back right, sets up a screen, got it to Swift, picks up a block at the 20, Swift 15, Swift 10, Swift 5, Swift end zone, touchdown.
Great reporting on Watergate, though. We just need to have that out there.
You're right about that.
You got to take this one, Greg. Still recovering.
I mean, you can enjoy this at least.
Yeah.
Sure.
The team! I like to just listen to Dick Banks.
One-man house band? I wrote this song.
Team!
Yeah.
Oh!
I'm not the performer.
No,
but I get the royalties. You know how much money I made off this song?
You're like the Jack Antonoff of around the NFL podcast.
I just need stupid hipster glasses. I've made $17 million on that song in royalties from this podcast.
How many drafts did that song go through? I mean, there's
the great ones. They come to you in 5 minutes.
Sure.
I woke up from a dream and I was just like, "Oh my God,
it's poetry."
The Lions are alive.
Wait, we're talking about the
Lions are alive.
It's about me. The Lions are alive because they just destroyed the Bears, which is not a huge achievement. But again,
it's about me.
Credit the Lions for doing something like, for instance, the Jets didn't. Taking care of business with a 41-10 win at Ford Field. The Lions, in case you forgot, were left for dead at 1-6, was it? And now they've won 7 of 9. They're 8-8. And yes, they can get back to the playoffs for the first time since 2016. heading into Week 18. And, Greggy, you're going to tell us in a bit how that exactly happens. But let's start by talking about this game. How did they destroy the moribund Chicago Bears?
They had a championship response. And, yes,
championship response. I love it.
I mean, it's against the Bears, yes, but it's also the biggest game they've had in many years. The crowd was going bananas before the game even started, and they're immediately down 7-0. And that first drive, to me, like the moment where I'm sweating the most because I locked up the Lions, I think was telling, because 2 plays in that drive. Number 1, 3rd and 10, third play from offense. They blitz Goff. They do a good job moving him off the spot, and he moves in the pocket, which I think he's done better this year, making a couple plays where he has to move a little bit, calmly finds the open receiver after buying a little extra time on 3rd and 10 under pressure, keeps the drive going. Later in that drive, 4th and 4, I mentioned on this show last week, I thought Dan Campbell blinked a little bit with his 4th down decisions in Carolina, didn't show that same chutzpah that he'd been showing all season. First drive of this game, down 7-0, goes for it on 4th and 4. They get a penalty, they get the touchdown, and off they went. 504 yards of offense. They only allowed 9 first downs defensively. This was a beating.
I loved one thing I love about how Detroit adjusted in this game and got out of a fix was that early on, and we were watching this, together, Greg. I was more listening to you
holding
watching.
Hands.
I sort of was like announcing the game as it was happening. I'm loving this Lions season.
I was watching Justin Fields though, and he looked like, because he tore them up on the ground the first time they met. It's not a good run defense. We know what happened a week ago. And 20 minutes into this in real time, it looked like Chicago was going
yards
to
on the ground in the first quarter.
It was like you're going to get one of those games from him. And Detroit might not have any way to stop this after what happened a week ago. They tightened it up. I mean, it seemed like he got banged up at one point, and they kind of de-emphasized him on the ground. And then what happens to the Bears? Their leading receiver had 27 yards. So it's like they're so limited, and they just can't. If it's not him on the ground, they're done.
Yeah, he finished 132 yards rushing. He's up over 1,100 yards on the ground, but 7 of 21, Greggy, for 75 yards through the air. So,
well, the Lions' defense, is like
not a finished product all the way
He's
around.
had much better days passing, but not
they're
today.
a run funnel, as the fantasy kids would say, which they're just begging teams to run against them. They're a really bad run defense, and that could hurt them against the Packers, but their pass rush was incredible today. The Bears lost 2 offensive linemen early. You're right. I think they got some breaks. Fields got a little banged up at the end of the first quarter, and then he seemed a little more hesitant, and then suddenly they were facing a big deficit. In the end, he moved, but they could not protect him.
And 7 sacks.
Josh Pascal, who's a second-round pick for them and didn't play most of this season, has entered the lineup late in the season, got a couple sacks. James Houston, who still doesn't have 100 snaps on the season and was playing for Deion Sanders last year, is up to 7.5 sacks and had a forced fumble in a key spot on Fields. Aiden Hutchinson had a terrific game, creating havoc, had a sack, had an interception.
Another interception.
The interception was amazing, too.
It's like
where were these guys last week?
I know. Well, I think that, to my point, I think when they can rush the passer, they're a good team. I think they're a good pass defense, a good pass rush right now, but they just can't stop the run, and eventually the Bears just couldn't.
And how do they, before we move on, how do you get to the playoffs, Detroit Lions? Winning in?
They are in the worst spot of the 3 NFC teams that are still alive. So it's down to Seattle, Green Bay, and Detroit. Green Bay, winning in. The Lions, as I mentioned, win, and they need a Seattle loss.
Against the Rams.
Seattle,
that's
needs the Packers to lose. So that we'll see. They're counting on the Rams to step up against Seattle. It's not impossible, but I do think no matter what, getting to Week 18 with a chance to either make the playoffs or end the Packers season and end your season potentially on a win and a winning record, you can't tell me that actually wouldn't be a better end of the season than getting blasted by the 49ers or something in the wild card round. I think they have a lot to play for no matter what. That's all I'm saying.
Can I push back? Because we were talking about this. Like I'll push back on that winning in Week 18 would be better than a Lions team. If we're going to talk about the Jets as being
I don't think better, but it's gonna mean a lot and give you a good feeling is all I mean.
I mean, I would much prefer the coaching staff and the players get to the playoffs and you deal with growing pains there and you learn from it for the next year. Because Like, this fan base has been through hell and back twice.
Just making the playoffs is a massive organizational boost.
Absolutely.
That's the Bills. Remember when they had that long drought and they got there? I remember Wes was all fired up because he hated that Bills team.
With Tyrod.
Because Andy Dalton had that huge touchdown against the Ravens. Like, yes, the Bills weren't a great team that year, but that was an organizational stepping stone, and then all of a sudden they were a big-time team. I hope the Lions do make it. That would be fun.
I bet you get Sean McVay is going to be amped up to knock out Seattle, too.
Yeah. Maybe get one more Big Baker game, and it opens the door for Detroit.
7-2 in the last 9. Nice job.
Let's hear from Dan Campbell before we take a break. Our coach.
It's just so special. It's as good as it can get. I mean, seriously, you get to go to Lambeau, historic Lambeau, where the tops in this division has been Green Bay every year for years, and to go earn your right, to potentially get in. Even if you do get that win, doesn't mean you're guaranteed to get in. I know
Dan
we're guaranteed to get one more week.
Yeah.
And,
come on, Ron.
And so I just think this is as special as it gets. I mean, I just don't think you'd want it any other way.
Very cool. All right, let's take a break. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. We said earlier the Lions haven't been to the playoffs since 2016. There's another team that has not punched their ticket since 2016. Let's head to the swamps of Jersey, the Meadowlands.
Takes the snap, play
That's
fake
my
to
Bruce
Barkley.
Springsteen.
Jones rolls to his left, gets a block from Thomas. He's to the 5. Jones races in. Touchdown, Giants. Second rushing touchdown for Daniel Jones. And let the party begin at MetLife Stadium.
Indeed, Bob Papa. Oh, WFAN with the call. Daniel Jones threw 2 touchdown passes, ran for 2 touchdowns. That's 4 touchdowns for Mr. Jones. And the Giants rolled over the completely corpse-like Indianapolis Colts, 38-10. Remember what Zach Kiefer said a couple months ago? Oh, yeah, they'll win one more game with Jeff Saturday as the head coach. They're going to do exactly that. Kiefer
Zach
plugged
Kiefer
in.
nails
As always.
I don't think they've won. They got to win next week then
No,
against the
they've won.
Texans. Yeah.
They beat the Dirtbag Raiders.
Oh, that's right.
That first
beforehand.
game.
Yes.
And have lost out since. Anyway, 38-10 Giants over Colts, and the Giants do qualify for the playoffs. Greg, listen. I'm not going to take anything away from the Giants. They've had a nice schedule this year. They've had some things go their way. But it doesn't matter. The fact that they, in Brian Daboll's first year, with that roster, with those injuries, to win 9 games and get to the playoffs, big development for the franchise.
And they're playing their best ball right now. I think their last 3 weeks is their best 3-week stretch of the entire season. I think their offense is certainly playing their best of the entire season. And I love that Danny Dimes had a moment. I mean, you wouldn't have thought the way his career was going that he was going to have a moment where Brian Daboll, very cool I thought, took him out in the middle of a drive in the fourth quarter. So he got the standing ovation during the game, NBA style, like when they're taking Tatum out after he scores 50. I loved it.
Daboll's done everything right this year, even that.
It was awesome. And this was one of his best games ever, Daniel Jones. His first touchdown, I think, showed his progression as a player where he gets to his third read. He moves outside the pocket. He was very calm, and he finds the guy. He's, making plays, and he's being very smart when he's doing it. And they're healthier. Hodgins and Bellinger's making some plays. I think they've stabilized. Saquon's running well. I actually do think they're a little better right now than I've thought most of the rest of the season.
Yeah, they did stabilize. Remember, this seemed like a team that was free falling out of contention. And
especially
here they are.
Yeah, especially when you were wondering if Saquon Barkley was going to finish the season. Even a shadow of himself, and that has gotten better. And when you get this version of Daniel Jones, and you have Brian Daboll who worked with Josh Allen, I'm not saying that Daniel Jones is Josh Allen, but you get that power on the ground.
11 for 91 and 2 touchdowns.
That's when you get those games, and then you get Saquon doing what he's doing. Like, the Giants are a tough out. I realize you're playing the Colts. I will mention this about Zach Kiefer, by the way. He had a pretty telling tweet today. He said, I've covered some bad teams in my years on this beat. Teams that unexpectedly lost its starting quarterback before the season, 2017, 2009. This is the worst Colts team of them all. And I mean, okay, he's been there for a long time, but the plan also feels completely off the map. They're talking about Jeff Saturday as a legit candidate. I would spread a wide net
that
before
like
you go back
noise
down
too,
that road.
By the way, because I
think the owner likes Jeff Saturday. The owner likes Jeff Saturday.
But
that's the problem.
My point is, by floating that out there to the media, it makes it seem like the owner didn't really mess up because he's liked them enough that he'll be considered, but they'd be nuts. But I don't know what's going on with that
I'm
group.
just saying,
The less said about the Colts, the better at this point.
Yeah.
Let's hear from Saquon Barkley talking about Danny Dimes playing the biggest game in the biggest spot.
Hear his name getting chanted. It's a beautiful thing, and you can finally see he's starting to get the respect that he earns. I know everyone want to be a big critic of him and say this and say that, but he gave us the opportunity to play playoff football, and he locked it in today. When we needed him most, he came up and made big plays.
There you go.
Made some money. One of the reasons I believe in the Giants more than I did, and it's all relative, but it's the defense. They got Xavier McKinney back, one of their best players in their secondary today. They got Adoree Jackson back, their best cornerback today. Their pass rush is healthier than it's been. Azeez Ojulari's back. Thibodeau had a great game. We can talk about his celebration if you want. Dexter Lawrence. Somewhere Dave Gettleman is watching this game and saying, how you like me now? Danny Dimes, Dexter Lawrence, and Saquon Barkley. I'm not all bad, Giants fans.
Well,
not
he's
all
right.
bad.
He's right.
Yeah.
He found some players for them.
There you go. No, the Kayvon thing, Kayvon, our buddy, not our friend, and he'll be on the show one day. He absolutely creamed Nick Foles, who Nick Foles upset that he's injured. He has a rib injury. He was knocked out of the game. Probably should have never been playing in the first place.
Really struggled in this
the
game
way he's
beforehand.
looked this season. I don't know if we'll see Nick Foles again, period. He was doing a big-time snow angel for 10, 12 seconds as Foles was writhing in pain next to him about 2 feet away. I thought I even saw Kayvon, and a lot of people pointed this out on Twitter, take a peek and see Foles there,
I
and
saw that too.
continued to do the snow angel. A lot of people got on him. Ryan Kelly of the Colts called it horse S. Kayvon claimed that he didn't see Foles there. Anyway, it's
he also gestured. I didn't mind the celebration because you could either see him or not, and you're down there doing it. But he did put put him to sleep sign over on the sideline while.
It's part of the Thibodeau
He's also
package.
playing great,
Yes.
which is also important.
All part of the package.
He's one of the reasons that the Giants are where they are right now because he's been a successful pick, no doubt about it. I mean, I saw him waving his arms and he's tapping Foles at the side. I don't know if he saw him or not. We have to trust him on that, but it was a weird look because I think for me, when you have these hits where you have someone like Foles, someone that we've seen go to the greatest possible heights, and then he's on the ground writhing in pain, and it ended up being a rib injury. So, but I don't know. That kind of stuff is it makes you think differently about the sport in general.
And I agree about the Giants looking better than they have, even when they were winning a lot of games earlier in the season. That's going to be – I know you could say, the Giants, it's not an exciting team. They're going to play a very close game again against the Vikings if they meet in the playoffs.
And they'll probably rest their starters, as we mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Oh, nice lock.
Yeah, this was probably my most successful lock of the whole year. The first time I've been able to just sit back and be like, all right, they took care of business.
Did you guys hear something? Did you guys hear something?
I didn't hear anything. I mean,
oh, Justin.
It's the guy who's in last place in the picks competition.
Hey, Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year, Justin. Great job on the lock.
Thanks.
Wish I would have locked that New York team. All right, let's keep moving. Let's head across the sidewalk to SoFi Stadium. Battle of Los Angeles.
Yawn.
Hand off to Eckler. Eckler hits the hole, and he's through. To the 40, to the 50.
That voice is
to the
familiar.
40. It's a foot race. 30, 20, 10. Austin Eckler, touchdown! Chargers. 72 yards, a new career long.
Leonard Floyd giving it everything he's got. You're not going to catch Austin Eckler.
Matt Money Smith going into the Hall of Fame, the Around the NFL Hall of Fame. If you ever get like an exhibit somewhere,
yeah, he would be front and center.
He's getting like a whole glassed-in portion.
And his partner is broadcasting.
Maybe we'll put the exhibit on Mark's desk. He has nothing else on the desk, so there's room there.
If something were to happen chaotically, I don't want any possessions here that matter.
Money and Daniel Jeremiah with the call, KYSR. Yes, Austin Eckler again. If you passed on him in your fantasy draft, as I know I did, to take Jonathan Taylor, oh, you're eating dirt because he's had another huge season, and he led the way in a 31-10 whipping by the Chargers of the Rams. The defending champions fall to 5-11. Not a lot on the line in this game. The Rams obviously just playing for pride, and the Chargers pretty much locked in, I believe, Greg, in the AFC. Am I correct about that? At 10-6 now.
They have a chance, as we're taping this, to move up a seed.
Wish I didn't say it. Too late now.
Good tease, though, for later.
Yeah. Anyway, 31-10. Eckler goes for 122 on the ground, 39 through the air game. Herbert has a very steady performance. Who watched this game? Who was on this game? Gravedigger.
I watched this game.
All right.
I will say this was a sensational game for Mike Williams and Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler was at one point in the third quarter was averaging 14 yards per carry. I think he finished with like
that's good
12 yards per carry.
12.2 on 10.
Yeah.
Totes.
I mean, he could have touched the ball more, but at the same time, the starters for the Chargers were out of this game with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter because it was wrapped up, and they got to preserve these guys for a playoff game.
There you go.
I think this matters. I mean, it's the first time they scored 30-plus since Week 5, and we've been waiting to see the Chargers kind of flex their muscles and not be – it's the same talking point every week. Like, why isn't Joe Lombardi doing X, Y, and Z with Justin Herbert? Why are they so sort of hemmed in and truncated? It's like, go blow someone's doors off.
They've won 4 straight games. All the things that we expect out of the Chargers to slip up, not happening. Their injury luck getting better. Joey Bosa played in this game, returned even a week earlier than expected. Might have Rashawn Slater back for the playoffs. They are the team I wouldn't feel comfortable with if you're one of those top teams in the first round.
And we'll get into the Chargers more later in the week. Good job by L.A. Anything else to add? I don't think so. Let's move elsewhere in the AFC West, where the Broncos and Chiefs were supposed to play a huge Week 17 game. Instead, it wasn't a huge game, but the Chiefs still had to take care of business, did they?
Snap to the right forearm of Russell Wilson, and he's going to be hit. Chris Jones got him in a bear hug. Now he gets rid of the ball and knocked down, but picked up by the Chiefs at 1:13 to go in the game. Chris Jones just took the game in his own hands.
Big play there. Sneaky big play for the Chiefs, who got into a straight-up battle with the Broncos and went down to the last drive, and Chris Jones makes the play, sacking Russell Wilson to ensure a 27-24 win for Kansas City that keeps the Chiefs in the mix for the number 1 seed in the AFC at 13-3. The Broncos have now lost 15 straight games to the Chiefs. How about that? How about that? This was a game from the Chiefs side of it. That was a big play for a young defense. I thought it was a good test there at the end. They needed to make the stop, and they got it done. So I know Andy Reid obviously is looking at that as another positive sign as January comes around. Patrick Mahomes went over 5,000 yards passing once again, which is just amazing. He does it almost effortlessly. He also threw an end zone pick, missed a gimme deep ball touchdown pass. I think, Greg, he's going to probably win MVP, but I think maybe it's just me, but sometimes when I'm watching him, I don't see him locked in as in some other Pat Mahomes years where it's just like, oh, my God, this guy's out of his mind. Sometimes there are those slip-ups, but in general, he had another very good game, and they took care of business, although it was quite a battle here.
Well, I think his worst stretch of the season is since December started. Not that it's been bad, but you lose to the Bengals. You struggle. He played well in that first Broncos game, but that ended up being a shootout where you don't score any in the second half. You struggle with the Texans. Last week was a struggle offensively, and then this game is close. It just feels like the same Chiefs stuff. I don't know what to think about it, but you end up with 46 yards rushing, and then your special teams is bad week after week, and I know Chiefs fans have been saying it a lot, like special teams is going to get this team killed, and they keep winning these close games, and a lot of the reason why they're close is because their special teams let them down.
Yeah, they had a fumbled punt by Kadarius Toney. They had a botched snap on an extra point attempt. So they just, it's just
another missed field goal.
I hate that they can't run the ball consistently, though. It's annoying.
Yeah, it's something that I wonder if they're going to try to address in the offseason, but that is not the time. Jerick McKinnon, by the way, has made history here. His 5th receiving touchdown in 5 consecutive games as a running back. So that's interesting. So they are getting production out of their backfield, even if it's not in a traditional way. On the Denver side, I thought Russell Wilson was better. 2 of his best games of the season were against the Chiefs, but in very 2022, now 2023 Russ form, he kind of killed them with a really bad interception that led to a Kansas City score in the second half that kind of set the tone for this game shifting, in addition to taking the sack with the game on the line. So kind of more of the same in that. But you did get for the Broncos, the interim coach, Jerry Rosburg?
Yeah.
You did get that post-firing bump from the team that played very hard to the end. Ultimately, they came up short.
I mean, Russell Wilson, if you want to try to sell it to the next potential coach, good luck with that duty, first of all. But against the Chiefs, your most important divisional opponent, he's got 469 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks, also 84 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns against Kansas City in 7 quarters because Brett Rypien played a quarter. But
Rypien.
It's well, I say Rypien.
But that's wrong.
Disrespectful to the man.
That's a Super Bowl MVP.
I'll think about altering that. But that's how
I don't know where my lexicon came from.
I've
it's
always
like when
said his name.
Dan has different pronunciations for your first name sometimes that you don't appreciate.
Yeah, I don't appreciate that.
One of Chris Wesseling's favorite players on defense for years was Justin Simmons. He loved this safety combo. Justin Simmons has been a beast this year, 6 interception. And this doesn't quite qualify as developing news, but the Broncos have already reached out to Jim Harbaugh.
That feels.
I don't know.
For a team that's going to do the old thing where they go from the guy that was way too nice and soft to the hard ass Harbaugh, they're going to spend a lot of money. It's Walmart money. That makes a lot of sense. I'm not saying it's going to be the right move. Harbaugh's he wears out welcomes.
He's had some flirtations with the Jets too over the years, so it's just something to keep in mind.
Well, you talked to the Washington Post about that.
Ian also mentioned Sean Payton and Dan Quinn. I don't know. I think this is a weird job.
It's a
excessively weird.
It's a weird job. Oh, you know what else is weird? I love this interaction between Adam Archuleta, whose voice I believe you'll hear first here, and Greg Gumbel, his partner in the booth for CBS.
You never want to take a helmet to the crotchal region, but
crotchal?
Yes, that's
it's a medical term.
Yeah.
Being helped off the field is number 27, Damari Mathis.
I first heard that from my good friend Ron Burgundy.
Greg. Wait.
So Mathis helped off the field?
The chemistry.
What really sold it for me was that long, uncomfortable, pregnant pause because Greg Gumbel does not know who the hell Ron Burgundy is, what that is.
Not a chance.
And so he just quiet, and Archuleta just hangs. He just leaves Archuleta hanging to die there.
I've had a lot of games where the two of them are doing their thing, and sometimes I think Archuleta may have some complaints off the air about the lack of chemistry potentially.
Let's take a break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Let's wrap up the afternoon games ahead of the Sunday Night Football, starting with Jags, Texans, AFC South for all the marbles. Not even a single marble on the line.
He's into the open field, 40, 30, 25, 20, 15,
Does anybody have marbles anymore?
Touchdown.
What is the state of
Travis
marbles in culture?
What a great
It's in the
job by
distance.
the offensive line of opening up a huge cavity.
Right.
Travis just ran right through him all the way to the end zone.
It's kind of gross. Okay.
It's like your internal monologue interrupts every one of these calls.
Frank Frangie with the call WOKV. That was Travis Etienne with a 62-yard touchdown. He had a $108 and a score before halftime, and then he was done. They pulled him. Same thing with Trevor Lawrence. Got him out of the game. Didn't matter the game for the Jaguars, who were playing for the AFC South. Or did we establish that it actually did kind of matter? They could still get the wild card. Whatever. They took care of business. 31-3. I'm like Ron Rivera now. Who am I to judge? Jacksonville's 8-8. First place in the AFC South. They'll win the division for the first time since 2017. Mark with a win over the Tennessee Titans next Sunday The Titans have lost 6 straight, of course.
There were whispers out there, like, could the Jaguars decide to yank everyone because of the nature of next week's game?
Yes.
And I just love that Doug Peterson basically sat no one, went in, and then they, on reverse, got to pull a bunch of people late in the game, and they got their rest.
I'm pissed off, Angelo.
I don't think he is anymore, not after this.
No, he famously was upset that the front office made him sit as quarterback when he was the coach of the Eagles. And he was saying, I think pointedly this week, every game matters. And I believe in that in this scenario at least, where it's a young team who's 7-8, it's not like they've earned, like, let's like take off to keep it going. They have to feel like they have a lot of confidence right now. And it's because every part of the team is really contributing, like their running game, their defense, like everything's been really clean lately. I think they're feeling great.
Yeah, I'm with you. They're explosive. After that ETN 62-yard touchdown, they flipped around, and the Texans have been playing well in recent weeks and putting up a fight. But Davis Mills had a sort of a wayward, backward pass that fluttered and was picked up by Tyson Campbell. It was suddenly 21-0, and it's like, this thing's over. Like, when the Texans are bad, they're really bad. But it has to do with the fact that, like, to your point, Greg, like when the Jacksonville Jaguars operate in complete fashion like this, they're scary. I would rather play other teams that maybe would have a higher seed in the playoffs than Jacksonville right now.
And I don't know if it's in the lock zone, but the Jaguars, make no mistake, they're going to boat race the Titans.
It's not in at least the
early. It was today, though.
I checked the early. Oh, there we go. Jack.
Hello, Graver.
It's a 6.5-point spread right now.
No. Today it was lock-worthy.
Yeah. I got you.
Well, you guys really went out on a limb with your locks this week, huh?
Well, that was 3.5 when I did it.
That was smart.
Mark, are you nervous
it's a terrible
about
line, but great job.
Are you nervous about our game next week, Mark?
Which game?
Our Titans fans.
I've absolved myself. You literally had me removed as a fan on some absurd poll on Twitter. So
let's move to.
I do want to bring up the scenario you brought about.
Yes.
So if the Jaguars lose next week, they could still potentially be the wild card.
Right.
If Miami loses.
Possible.
Very possible.
Buffalo beats the Patriots.
Probably going to happen.
And as long as the Steelers don't finish this season on a long winning streak, they just have to lose one of.
Very possible.
Well, the Steelers play Cleveland.
So this game did matter for Jacksonville on some level.
Sure.
And they took care of business in a way that the Chiefs and the Cowboys couldn't against the Texans, much less the Titans.
And the Texans, good job for the Texans. Just stay right where you are, take some L's, and get that number 1 overall pick. And the Jags, I would say, we'd want them as the 7th seed over any other team that's in the mix right now. But then you would have a Jags team coming off a loss to the Titans in Week 18, and the Titans hosting a playoff
either way,
game.
it's bad.
We don't
Starting
want
Josh Dobbs,
that.
by the way.
No, I don't.
We don't want any of that.
I want Jaguars over half the teams you just mentioned.
I wanted just to see the Dobbs family reaction to him making the playoffs. Will they react? Will they not?
Guys, the doors on the commissary upstairs close with our free dinner.
Well, let's move.
If we don't wrap this up, so let's head to Atlanta. People need to know the real-world stakes.
It is a 21-yard field goal for
Younghoe
Koo to give Atlanta its
people
6th
should
win of the year.
know that I'm doing my kicker rankings during Monday Night Football.
And during the call of this game.
People wait for that tweet all year. The old Zeusers kicker ratings will be done during the Monday Night Football telecast. Keep your eyes on Twitter.
All right.
People go nuts about
Why are we
kicker
talking
ratings.
during every radio call?
No, I'm just doing it for fun. Wes Durham with the call. Apologies to Wes. WZGC. Good call. Younghoe Koo hit the field goal at the gun. He's been doing that for the last couple years. And the Falcons take care of... Hang on, I lost my train of thought on this one. They take care of the Arizona Cardinals 20-19. So the Falcons move to 6-10. Obviously, they're eliminated. The Cardinals now 4-12. This was the only game of the week that had no playoff ramifications. Anybody have a thought?
It did have David Blau, who is a friend of the show to some degree. I'm not sure he knows that. 222 yards, a touchdown, no picks.
You just reading a box score over there?
Yeah, because I have not yet had a chance to observe this as closely as I would, but I cannot wait to dig in.
But he did play.
I think he played pretty well, and I think it's another chance. Ritter looks like he takes little steps every week.
David Blau also had 2 carries for 7 yards.
He's a player.
3.5 yards a carry. You know, not a great average, but also not embarrassing.
Arizona's still in the 4 seat. You know, the number 4 pick right now. Atlanta went back a couple spots with this win.
Rough.
At 6. I did want one more win if this is going to be the end of the Cliff Kingsbury era, just for Hard Knocks' sake. They're trying hard every week, and they just can't get it done.
Another nice performance by your guy, Tyler Algier. So something positive for the Falcons that they have a really nice backfield tandem there with Cordell Patterson.
It's funny because I think like 2 months ago it wasn't really getting much notice, but I think he's the leading rookie rusher right now.
There you go. There you go.
Doesn't help that Pierce.
I mean,
he saw
it way ahead of that. He has more than Ken Walker.
You actually, when I first mentioned him, you looked at his yards per carry on the season and told me that the whole thing was a joke. And it's like, look where we are now. That's called scouting, Greg.
And can we also say that Breece Hall would have won the rushing title if he didn't blow out?
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
And I still am upset about that.
It wasn't like an anti-Breece Hall take.
I know, but it did stir up more negative emotions about my personal fan experience. Anyway, congratulations to the Atlanta Falcons on the victory. All right, and that's it for the YouTube presentation of our show.
Gave them their due.
Check out the Around the NFL podcast.
That's so heartfelt.
Wherever you get your podcast to get our Sunday Night Football recap of Ravens and Steelers, and check us out all week long where we cover our league. All right, till next week, either call. It's just like, congratulations.
It's like hit the button for the Dan bot every time the Falcons win. Just play that.